Watch Jimmy Fallon's blind audition for The Voice, where he forces Blake Shelton to turn around. Fallon appeared on Tuesday's episode where he performed I Keep Forgetting, Every Time You're Near. For the coaches, Jimmy Fallon put his vocals to the test on The Voice. On Tuesday's episode, the talk show host played a prank on the coaches by conducting his own blind audition. In the opening of the video, host Carson Daly said, "We have a surprise for our coaches. Right now, we have an artist preparing for the biggest performance of their entire life." Fallon, 48, then took the stage and put on an impressive performance of I Keep Forgetting, Every Time You're Near. Kelly Clarkson and Niall Horan were the first to turn around and immediately started dying of laughter when they realized who was singing. Then Chance the Rapper turned around and let out a scream in shock as Fallon danced around the stage. "You can't do that." "You know the rules," said Shelton, 46. Fallon then proceeded to congratulate the country star on 23 seasons with the show and gave him a big hug. "It didn't take me long to figure out that it was Jimmy Fallon, and there was no way I was going to hit my button. He does not deserve the chair turn on this show." Jimmy's impersonation is the equivalent of walking up to Michael McDonald and slapping him in the face as hard as you can, Shelton added as Fallon walked away singing. Last week, the coaches spoke to People, and the Sangria singer revealed that he wanted to expand his one-man band with his fellow coaches. "We'll call it Different Directions," Shelton said, nodding at Horan's former band One Direction. "Take it and run off the show." Season 23 is the first for new coaches Horan and Chance, both 29. Related video. Blake Shelton wants to start a band called Different Directions with Niall Horan and their fellow voice coaches. "It feels like going to camp," Chance said of joining the show. "You get here the first day like, oh, I don't know everybody. Within a couple of days, you're all a big family." Horan added, "I really enjoyed the blind audition experience. It was nerve-wracking at the start, but once you get into it, like Chance said, everyone around the show is great. It's good fun, apart from Blake." This season marks the 9th for Coach Clarkson, 40, who took last season off. "I am so excited to be back," Clarkson said. "You forget how much you love helping people become the best version of themselves, musically. I missed it." Shelton said with a hint of sarcasm that he also missed Clarkson so much. "That's why I was constantly asking if I could be a guest on her talk show," he said, as Clarkson clarified. "I've asked him to co-host stuff with me. He turns me down." The lights dimmed in the grand studio of The Voice, the audience buzzing with anticipation. It was just another night of spectacular vocal performances where the world's hidden talents found their moment to shine. The red swivel chairs loomed center stage, manned by judges Kelly Clarkson, Niall Horan, Gwen Stefani, and Blake Shelton. Blake, the undisputed king of country music and reigning coach of The Voice, was especially relaxed, sipping his sweet tea and cracking jokes. Little did he know, the next act would leave him stunned and laughing hysterically. The host, Carson Daly, stepped onto the stage with a mischievous grin. "Ladies and gentlemen, the next performer is someone you'll never forget. Please welcome Jimmy," he announced cryptically. The crowd murmured, puzzled by the lack of a last name. Then, without warning, the unmistakable sound of the house band's jazzy intro began, soon transitioning into the opening chords of Michael McDonald's I Keep Forgetting, Every Time You're Near. Behind the scenes, a shadowy figure emerged, clad in a denim jacket and aviator sunglasses. The cameras zoomed in as Jimmy Fallon, the king of late-night comedy, swaggered onto the stage. His exaggerated attempts at looking mysterious drew laughter from the audience. Fallon grabbed the microphone, cleared his throat dramatically, and launched into the soulful opening lyrics. A performance like no other. Fallon's performance was unconventional, to say the least. His voice vacillated between overly serious attempts at hitting the song's deep, sultry notes and sudden bursts of comedic falsetto. He sprinkled in exaggerated vibratos and an unintentional squeak that made the audience roar with laughter. The judges, of course, had no idea who was singing. Kelly looked intrigued, Niall appeared to be stifling a chuckle, Gwen tapped her chin thoughtfully, and Blake sat stoic, arms crossed. Despite the theatrical performance, not a single judge turned their chair. Jimmy, noticing their indifference, upped the ante. Mid-song, he pulled out a harmonica from his pocket and launched into an impromptu solo, although it was painfully obvious he didn't know how to play. The combination of his comedic antics and earnest, if misguided, attempts at singing had the crowd howling. Still, the red chairs remained firmly forward-facing. Fallon's secret weapon, realizing his soulful crooning wasn't working, Fallon stopped mid-note, waving to cut the music. He leaned into the microphone and said, "You guys must not recognize true talent when you hear it. But don't worry, I've got a little something just for you, Blake Shelton." The crowd erupted into cheers. Fallon quickly transitioned into a hilariously over-the-top rendition of Shelton's hit song, God's Country. As soon as Fallon sang the opening lines in his exaggerated southern drawl, Gwen Stefani burst out laughing, whispering something to Kelly Clarkson. Niall Horan clutched his chest, pretending to swoon at the sheer audacity of the performance. Blake Shelton, however, remained stubbornly unmoved. He adjusted his cowboy hat, shaking his head slightly as if to say, "You're not going to break me, Fallon." The crowd takes sides. The energy in the studio was electric. The audience, sensing the brewing showdown between Fallon and Shelton, began chanting, "Turn around! Turn around!" Fallon leaned into the moment, throwing himself to his knees as he belted out the chorus. "Blake, this God's country," he shouted, pointing directly at Shelton's chair. The crowd roared with approval. Blake, ever the master of deadpan humor, leaned toward his microphone and quipped, "I'd turn around, but I don't want to encourage whatever this is." The final push refusing to admit defeat, Fallon pulled out his final trump card. "All right, Blake," he said, his voice dripping with mock seriousness. "If my singing can't get you to turn, maybe this will." From offstage, a crew member rolled out a giant cardboard cutout of Blake Shelton. Fallon dragged it center stage and began serenading it directly, improvising comically heartfelt lyrics about Blake's hair, his cowboy boots, and his love for Gwen Stefani. "You're my cowboy dream, my country king," Fallon crooned dramatically to the cutout. The audience was in hysterics. Even the judges couldn't hold back. Gwen doubled over, tears streaming down her face, while Niall and Kelly slapped their chairs in laughter. Blake Shelton breaks finally. After what felt like an eternity of comedic genius, Blake Shelton gave in. He slammed his hand onto his button, sending his chair spinning around to face Fallon. The moment the chair turned, Fallon threw the microphone to the ground, threw his hands in the air, and shouted, "Yes, I knew you loved me." The crowd went wild, their cheers reverberating through the studio. Fallon ran up to Blake, who was now laughing uncontrollably, and gave him an over-the-top bear hug. The judges react. Blake wiped away tears of laughter, shaking his head at Fallon. "You are absolutely ridiculous," he said, grinning. "That's the worst audition I've ever heard, and the best thing that's happened to me all season." Kelly chimed in, still laughing. "I mean, I was tempted to turn just for the harmonica part." "Jimmy, you've got something, I'll give you that." "Is it a record deal?" Fallon asked, pretending to look hopeful. "No," Kelly replied, laughing harder. Niall leaned forward, giving Fallon a thumbs up. "Honestly, mate, you've got guts." That was unforgettable. Gwen, still wiping her eyes, added, "Jimmy, you might not be the voice, but you are absolutely the moment." A surprise encore. Fallon, ever the showman, wasn't done yet. As the judges bantered, he grabbed the mic one last time and launched into an impromptu duet with Blake. Together, they sang a hilariously off-key version of Boys Round Here, with Fallon intentionally mangling the lyrics and Blake gamely trying to keep up. The night ended with all four judges joining Fallon on stage for a chaotic group sing-along.